Um, the first order of business is departmental requests and concerns. The first one comes from a citizen complaint asking us to deal with commercial traffic on Jungle Road, Palmetto Boulevard. It says, can you direct me to the person I should speak with about the possibility of moving trucks over 2 axles over to the 4-lane highway, Palmetto Boulevard, and off of Jungle Road? Input from council.
A comment. It seems like back in 2015 or 16, we petitioned the state to reduce the speed limit on that road. Is that not? Does anyone remember any of that?
On Jungle Road, it used to be 35.
And we went down to 30 for that same reason, because of traffic. My concern about moving the trucks to the front, beachfront, is because of our population in the summertime.
Mhm.
And with so many kids running back and forth across Palmetto Boulevard.
Well, you know, you have, you run X amount that would come in anyway, because you have waterfront, sea cow, you know, all your delivery trucks and stuff. And if you're building something on Jungle Shores or Jungle Road, same thing, you know, with the lumber stuff. Did I cut you off?
No, that was just my comment about, I really wouldn't like to, I don't know. Do we have any type of statistics that says which road they use the most? But I do know, living on Palmetto Boulevard, that sometimes those beer trucks, Pepsi trucks fly by. And you know, I see kids all the time running out there.
All right, Steve, that's your department.
I agree with Jerome. I don't know how we're gonna say this truck can go on Jungle Road and this one can't.
If you can do something about speed, right?
Yes, and we do. I can only think of one instance off the top of my head where a delivery truck had a collision with a pedestrian, and it was the pedestrian's fault. Absolutely. The person walked out in front of and hit the delivery truck rather than the delivery truck hitting them. So, I mean, I don't know what we would accomplish.
Right. Would that satisfy you, Jerome, if they made a concentrated effort to keep the speed?
Oh, yeah,
down?
that was, you know, would be one of my suggestions is to look for them a little bit more. Or, you know, I don't know what you can do.
I ask, what specifically is the issue? Is it noise? Is it safety? Is it?
I think it's because of the bike path.
I talked to, the resident and it had to do with safety and some with noise, but it was mostly safety. If you have the bike paths on the sides.
It can get pretty congested there.
It can,
Yeah.
but it gets congested on all of our roads during the summer.
The cars are just as, you know, safety issues, same with them. So I'm not sure what that's gonna solve.
Crawford.
I mean, for me, it's kind of Mike's next, because you're gonna have people, if you block them from going down Jungle, then you're gonna have that much. I don't know how much, I don't see many trucks, I mean, I don't see trucks that let off on Jungle. If you move them, if you say no more than three axles on the Jungle and move them to Palmetto, you're gonna increase the number there. That's where most of the crossings are, like you run through the summer. I just think you're trading the devil for the witch. So,
Patty?
Yeah, because my question was gonna be, what about UPS and FedEx? I don't know how many axles they have though, but, yeah, I just think it would be hard to do. I know that I've had a beer truck come down Burchell Street before and take out my power line, and so we didn't have power in this area, but I think they raised the power line, so that wouldn't happen again. But anyway, I can't see that we can make that determination.
Okay, well, we have discussed it and looked at it and asked the chief to concentrate on keeping them from speeding up and down
I got one more question.
Yes, sir.
What about the other issue I could see there is the trees that hang over the road? Is that something that maybe Patrick
We
had
actually,
to deal with that at all?
we actually requested in a work order to DOT. DOT is the state roads. We have, if there was one hanging, Denny and some of the firemen come out, if there's one hanging that's specific, you know, that is not the whole canopy or whatever, they've gone out and trimmed it. But typically, that's a work, is that not correct, Patrick?
Jungle Road is a DOT road. Typically, when we do some clearing, it's something that's barely hanging on. It's
Is that something that comes up that, you know, we got an issue there or is it not a big issue?
It usually becomes an issue when they decide to trim it through, the utility companies, which they haven't done. So much is cleared out with Matthew that it really has not been done too much lately, has it?
Typically, we have received some complaints, and it's mostly from people that have boats, that have like the top part of the motor, the rod holders or whatever. They, catch the tree limbs. And also because we're using garbage trucks that are a lot higher, because they actually have the arm that comes over. They're having to raise some of the cable lines and stuff, because we have some of those on side streets. But, DOT is pretty good at, you know, if we send something to them, they'll respond usually 24, 48 hours.
So would that answer your need?
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's not like a pressing issue, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay. Iris, you want to pick up, unless there's something else, I'm gonna make item B.
Well, I just wanted to say the request was anything over 2 axles, and I think, and I'm not sure, but if you're pulling a boat, that would also be a boat tractor, right? I'm not sure how popular that would be.
Yeah.
I don't, especially if you live in that area. All right, good move, Iris. Okay, town apartments, would you like to, discuss that, Iris?
I'm gonna turn this over to Patrick Brown.
So, I was asked to get an estimate on, re-roof and rebuilding the stairs on the town apartment. I did reach out and got an estimate on, getting some drawings to rebuild the stairs and an estimate on re-roofing. You may give the amount. You can get them both, the whole thing combined for about 15,000.
We patched the roof several times and was told the last time it was patched that it needed to be removed.
Well, if we don't do something, isn't, we can tell them, is that our insurance?
Well, it's not that, it's just if you get damage inside because you have a roof that's leaking, it's gonna be more costly than just replacing the roof. And we had to repair the stairs, because it was a temporary fix, and the tenants have complained that they feel the stairs are not real sound. I would recommend that in February, we do, as part of the budget adjustment, take that money out of the contingency and just go ahead and get it fixed. Sir?
What's in the news?
I think that, we had $120-something thousand in there.
I think it's like 150. So
Well, we did, but we used some last month. We had 150 and then we used some.
It's over 100, I know.
It is.
Okay.
And we're already 6 months into the year. I just think that because it is, to me, it could be more costly if we wait than it should be.
Yeah. You gotta take care of it.
All right, let's plan on that if there's no objection from council.
That's fine.
We're not gonna take a vote on it, you know, but that,
Right.
okay, next item. Town Hall Complex update, Iris.
Mark?
yes, ma'am. So where we're at now, quick update. We've met with council individually, with the exception of our new council member. And we can certainly do that as well. And we've met with our department heads, and we've been working with our architects to do space planning. So we've been collecting the needs of the different departments, et cetera. And they originally proposed a 28,000 square foot building. We have since scaled that down to a little over 20,000. And it can certainly be revised in either direction from there. And today, our main goal is to establish an architectural design committee with y'all's input on who should be with that, who should be on that, so we can start regularly scheduling design meetings.
When Iris and I talked, I liked her idea of asking for volunteers.
Okay.
Because the point was made that we think we know everybody, but we have such a transient population of people moving in and out. There could be the next answer to Einstein, our community, or somebody with that type of interest, we just don't know. So my recommendation would be to advertise for it. The citizen input of it. We'll still have us, we need to add 2 people just for communications. So, input from council. All right, so.
Are there any type of, are you looking for any specialties in those volunteers?
I think so. What immediately comes to mind is someone that has been involved with a building trade, so they're used to looking at plans, engineering, that type of thing, okay? That they're used to looking at plans. The other one would be that they're space planners, that look at utilization of space, efficiency. And the other one that came to mind was interior design, because it kind of hits several of those.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
so you're really talking about an engineer, architect, and interior design.
Not necessarily an architect per se, but
Well, architect with the specialty.
there are people that just work in office planning. That's all they do. If an office wants to redo their furniture, and stuff like that, they're office planners that lay it out. So, somebody that has some background in some of those.
What size group do you?
I think we just need to add 2 people from the community. That's my opinion anyway. You get it too big and you can't do anything.
Sound good?
We just need that community input, so that we're getting that PR in the community.
Jenny, did you say to only have 2 on the committee?
No, 2 citizens added to the committee.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
I'm sure we'll be a short meeting, Patty. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, Mark, I believe I'm going to throw this one to you too, the master recreation plan update.
Yes, ma'am. Iris and I met with Tool Design yesterday to kind of go through their first kind of draft they submitted, and we realized they've got a little more work to do. So we're probably looking at late February, March, where we'll bring them in and have them present their draft plan to council at that time. And we can have meetings with them prior to that too. And that's to get council's input, and then they'll go back and re-revise anything from that meeting. And then I also included here a proposed grant schedule. We have 3 coming up this year, and we're going to be able to use our public input through this through this master plan process to help our application and to make us more competitive on these 3 grants. Quickly, the first one is a land water conservation grant. That's a 50% match, and that will be for Vine Street Bike Path. That was already developed using that fund or that grant fund, so that kind of gives us an edge on that. The second one is Recreational Trails Program grant. Both of those are through the state. That's a 20% match. So that would be, they would pay $100,000 and we would match 20% of that. That could be used for new trails, such as extending the Vine Street Bike Path through to Track M, perhaps doing a winding walking trail around Track M as well, which will be shown on our master plan, and other improvements and linkages to try to connect our existing piecemeal bike path. Thirdly is a municipal association hometown economic grant. That's $25,000 with a 5% match. And that can be used for any park improvement that would, contribute to economic development.
And we're gonna prioritize these projects, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Just because the grant's available doesn't mean it skips to the top of the priority list.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I need to back up one with y'all's indulgence. Go back to the town hall complex.
Okay.
When do we have to submit this work for the special purpose local option sales tax?
I don't think, do we know that? Have they even advertised that
They
yet?
haven't advertised it yet. We would be informed when they start establishing the committee. I'm thinking that it has to go in November of 22. And that's why we had it set up so that we could get to that point that we would be prepared to present to the committee. I will double check that and I'll send out an email.
Because that's gonna have a big impact, on how fast we need to move or how slow or, what kind of timeline we have. Anybody else need to chime in on anything you discussed so far?
I want to talk about the recreation plan, please.
You may.
I just would like to plant a seed with council. One of the things that I'm so hoping that we will do on Track M, and some of you have already heard me say this, is to establish some sort of dog park. My concern is that 6 months out of the year, we really don't have a place for dogs to run because of our not being able to let them off leash on the beach. And those 6 months are when we have the most people here. And so I would love to see that we have a fenced-in area where dogs could let loose. Isle of Palms and James Island County parks both have very successful dog park. In fact, 3 years ago, I believe it was, the Municipal Association awarded Isle of Palms an award for their park that he completed that year. And I will, of course, talk with both of these parks before we, go further with this. But I just wanted to plant that seed in council's minds and hope that y'all will think about that and consider it.
Patty, Kelly might be relieved because right now they use Big Bay Park.
I know.
They come off the boats and stuff and don't clean up and everything else. So we will put that as a consideration, Mark. You got that on your
Yes, ma'am.
notes. Anybody else?
I have a general question. May I ask a question regarding that?
You may.
Is there a liability issue with county-owned, town-owned parks, dog parks?
I sent something to the Municipal Association, who is our insurer, and they did not see where there was any complications. I have an email to that effect.
So if one dog was to bite another, that's between the owners, it doesn't come back to the
I
town?
haven't gotten into the weeds on that,
Okay.
but I did ask about, insurance and liability.
Yeah, I was just curious, thank you.
I have a concern about that as well, if I may. Track M, the location there, we have a wastewater effluent holding pond, a deep well, as well as a transfer lift station pump. So that would be potentially some racing issues for utilities over there. I just asked that be considered when designing this.
Was that dealing with waste runoff?
Well, liability for anything getting into that pond or damaging the well or the transfer station there. I just think it might be a good idea to separate those assets from anything that you plan to do over there.
Is that Patrick speaking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that you have to think about is everybody has a long wish list. Walking trail, all of this on track in. Dog park, utilities. I mean, you go right down the list. At some point, we're gonna have to expand that wastewater pump. Now, you don't need to get too far ahead of yourself and put a lot of money in, that you're gonna have to turn around and dig up. Because once they go in there to do a pond, they're gonna run over everything that's there. It'll kind of take over the whole thing with the big equipment and all that
How
kind of
big,
stuff.
how big of an area would they need for a dog park?
I've seen various sizes, but I don't know the minimum size. Mark?
I've got like a draft kind of outline, what footprint, and it's probably a third of the track, not including the pond.
How much, I forgot how much space is over there. I mean, half
Yeah.
an acre or something, like third of an acre?
Oh, there's
It's more than-
1.39
But how much do you need for the dog
Right
park?
around 4 acres, I believe.
Probably smaller than the size of this room, I think, or maybe the size of this room.
About how much?
The size of council chambers.
Size of council room.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't one. So the plan is that, we've read the draft, we've made some comments, most of them were just, trying to make sure that if there were, any spelling errors or issues needed to be corrected. And then what we'd like to do is hold a special meeting with council because it is a large document. And then have, Tool Design come in and go through the plan with council, and then y'all can further refine it and then come up with some type of priority list of what you like, what you don't like, if you think, you do like, don't like, and want to change, before we do a final draft plan. And so we were hoping to have a meeting with council just to do that, of course, with the public. But that way y'all can look at this document, it's about, so large, front back. And, that'll give you a chance one-on-one to talk to Tool Design and ask these questions that we can't answer, like Patty had about, or, how large does it need to be? I don't know, but these people would know because that's their specialty.
That's a good move. Any idea when you're projecting?
We were hoping to do it in February or March.
Yeah, February or March.
February's kind of tight. We've got, the legislative action week, which is the 1st through 5th, and then we also have South Carolina Beachfront, South Carolina Beach Advocates meeting, which is the 8th and 9th. We're doing it virtually if anybody's interested.
And then we have a lot of legislative priorities that are gonna be. too.
We do, but it's up to council, whatever your preference is. Late February, March.
Let's go to March. Maybe more people will have their vaccinations by then.
Yeah.
Okay. So after council meeting or before council meeting?
I prefer not to combine it with council meetings.
No, we wouldn't have it on the same day as council meeting. I'm talking about the week before, the week after, 2 weeks after.
Probably,
That's a short month. Well, no, that's just a long month.
Yeah, we might not want to push it out too far.
It might need to be before council meetings.
So we're looking at week for council meeting.
Yeah, or sometime during the beginning of that week. First of that week.
Do y'all wanna have two meetings a week?
We can do that.
It's better than breaking another week.
Maybe have it when we would normally hold work sessions?
Yeah, on Tuesday morning.
Okay.
It's better than breaking into another week if somebody has plans.
Right.
Mark, you let them know.
Got it.
Okay, that's before the council meeting in March.
And once they get all these little corrections that we have done, we'll go ahead and send y'all out the plan so that y'all have more time to review it. And,
Right.
make your notes and comments.
Okay, good. Sounds like a plan. Beach access
Can
13.
you move back up the basic question?
Sure.
Financially for the master plan, why can't we, can we throw that into the, FEMA?
It's better not to.
You can throw anything into the capital project sales tax that you would like.
But here's the thing, Carl. You go with a lesser amount. Guess what you're gonna get awarded? You gotta establish your priority. What is your goal?
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt that, I mean, all you do is say no.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying too. If they say, well, we need to award something to us, instead of doing, oh, look, this recreation plan is only $1.5 million. They don't need a new town hall. They need a recreation plan. Let's do it. Don't confuse the issue.
Well, I'm not confusing the issue, but I don't see why we can't put it in the same manner.
What I would recommend is that, let me find out when they're gonna start establishing the committee for the capital project sales tax.
Okay.
They should already have a timeline established. And, one thing that we do need to do, or council needs to do as council, is they need to talk to your fellow elected officials in the city of Walterboro and Colleton County, because we do not have enough population to even have a seat on the capital project sales
We went through
tax
this before.
committee.
We went through this before.
Right. Right.
We did, and we were very thankful that the city of Walterboro gave up one of their seats and let us put somebody on that committee. I think it's in our best interest to have some kind of representation, so you might want to start talking to your current council people and also your elected officials at the city of Walterboro to see if anybody would be willing to allow us to have a seat on that committee.
I'll call Billy Gunn.
And then we can put this on the agenda depending on what that schedule is, and then council can, everybody can throw in all the projects that they want, and then council can decide which projects they want to ask for capital project sales tax funding and what priority it is. And that's how we did it the last time. Council decided if they wanted to have 1, 2, 3 projects, what projects, and in what order and what amount.
And here's the thing, Carl. Up to this point, our last ask was $4 million. If we go for a town hall, we may be talking 8.5. And you throw in something else and you got, they don't see
Okay,
it right
that's right,
away.
we can still look at the possibility. Never know.
Everybody can join.
And I can find out the specifics, like how much money they got, if they used all the money from the capital project sales tax, if they received more taxes than what they
They
anticipated.
probably did.
It seems like I heard that they did have more than what they could spend
do get more than.
and the projects that they had signed. So,
Would they not have to go to some of the other projects that didn't get approved? Did they have to?
what they did was they actually, had additional projects, approved if funding was available. So they actually approved projects for the amount they anticipated getting. And then they had like alternate projects that they would go to in case those projects did not go to fruition or if they had more money. So they did have some that were not necessarily funded, but it was in the wings in case funding came.
They were on the waiting list, Patty.
Right.
I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Beach Access 13, apparently, that's Ocean Villa. It's always a perennial problem, always. With parking. Nothing is ever gonna satisfy, the owners of Ocean Villa. Until you open up the whole thing to Ocean Villa, you know, it's like, yeah, they do have a problem. If I remember correctly, the back has the septic tank. The front has an oil tank or something in the front, under where they're parking cars. And it may not be in use anymore, you know, because the usage has changed. Used to be, you know, boarding house, essentially, and have restaurant food. But ours, you and Bert want to pick up on that?
Well, Mark, you know, has been working on this, but, you know, like, you said, Mayor, this has been a problem that has come up pretty much annually. We have issues where people are parking inappropriately in there because they don't know. The Tide Committee has asked that we try to standardize or make it, you know, delineate the property that is the town's property as opposed to private property. And so Mark worked on this so that it actually delineates our 50 feet that we have at beach access. I know that in the past, and Chief, you might respond to some of this, we have had to issue numerous parking tickets because they have a lot of rental space there. And so we have seen that, you know, the more rental space you have, the more vehicles that people bring, and they tend to overflow into that parking area and park inappropriately. And it leaves a bad taste in their mouth if they're parked there and they think that they're parked appropriately and they end up getting tickets. And most of the time, they've issued numerous tickets while people are rushing out trying to move their vehicles.
That's correct. We've gone in and issued 10 parking tickets in there at one time, because they just park all over the place, wind up blocking the access, everything else, so it is an issue.
So they're actually parking in the beach access parking spots? Is that what you're
They
saying?
will sometimes park in the beach access parking lots, and often there's so many cars in there that they block access to those parking spots.
Typically, they double up, so if they know you know, if it's a group and they come in, you know, the brother will park behind the sister, or, you know, the friends will park behind each other, they'll parallel park, you know, 2 deep across the front of that building. And that's where those people are parking inappropriately, where they're blocking, because the police department doesn't know that they're blocking someone that they know. They just know that they're parked inappropriately, and so they get a parking ticket. And now the parking tickets are $50. It leaves our tourists a bad taste if they think that they're parking appropriately. And this would identify exactly where they could park. So there wouldn't be any confusion.
Okay, from the picture, and I think what Mr. Culver is probably confused about is the way the fence is set up there, the rope fence. If you actually go and look at the building, where did you intend, Mark, for that rope fence to start and end? The one that's in the lot, not the corner's fine.
Right, corner's fine, and then you've got, you know, however wide this needs to be to fit the cars in. Then we pick the fence up again and block this whole side of the house basically until we get down to the end again. So it would be right up. Actually, if you go to the plat, it would run. You can see where the footprint of the house is and where our line is, our property line. So it would be right up next to the overhead deck shower below. And then after that little jut out, you have 12 feet, 12 inches in between those 2 steps, which is where he's parking. He's parallel parking the car in the picture. You can see So I said with this solution, you lose one space, but he argues that in the summertime, he could park 3 or 4 cars in there perpendicular. The issue is that he only has 12 feet and the average size of the car is much larger than 12 feet. So in order to do that, he's encroaching on our property, which narrows our 50-foot right of way, which is a safety issue for, cars able to back out properly.
My thing is, if it's our property, it's our property.
And so I also point out in the letter to Mr. Calvert that this is consistent with 2 or 3 other homes that we have that have a similar access issue like this. We provide them reasonable access to their property, but still have it designated either with a row of trees or a rope and fence.
Well, if you could take, I should say, that little jut out
Mhm.
and put that fence in front of that jut out, which starts at that section of trees right here,
Yes, sir.
right next to the building. It's a magnolia tree or what, there's a little jut out there, and then you get that indention. It
Mhm.
looks like 2 apartments there.
Mhm.
What would be wrong with if people could park in there? I mean, I pulled my truck in there to see, and it does stick out a little bit in the back there onto the town property, but they are having access to the property at other spots. You know what I'm saying? He's saying that you're gonna lose 4 spaces. And I can see if this fence continues on down in front of that indention.
Yeah, you talking about where that parallel cars park parallel down there?
Right. He doesn't have to park parallel. He can park in, straight in. There are a couple of spots there. You can get 2 cars in there if you pull in up to the steps.
Let me ask you this, John. If you do not legally abide by the 50 foot, which is our deed, right?
Right?
Then are you giving him property?
Well, ask yourself this question. How long has he been doing it? Is this adverse possession?
Can't adversely possess from a government entity.
Okay, now we know that, all right? So,
Other access that people have tried that before.
yeah,
Unsuccessful.
all right, so, well, the thing is, it's just, do you want a relationship with them, or do you want to work with them, or do you want to continue to do that? Because he is having access at the other spot, so, I don't know why it would be such a big deal to let him continue to park 2 in there unless it was causing a problem with people getting out of there from our access, backing out. I do know that at that particular access, I have been in there during the summer, and you do have to back out onto the highway sometimes, because there's no place to back out like this and then go out.
So the problem here is that one section we're talking about.
Right.
What about you, Chief? On that?
Anytime you're backing out onto the highway, especially in the summer, it's a problem. I mean, if you're asking for accidents, and even in the parking place, we've mentioned it before, when you've got cars backing around a great deal or trying to go around cars, you're gonna have accidents in the parking lot. So that, I don't know a good answer for that, but I know we need to find one.
So basically what we're talking about is blocking, is either blocking that little section or not blocking that little section. Is that what we're talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Because they were parallel parking right here.
Yes, sir.
Along where the fence is. So it's hard to back out from this side.
Right.
You have to back out to the street. That was the thing, so. And I don't know, our fence is up there pretty close to the wall. But I'm just saying, this particular access happens to butt up to a commercial piece of property, which may have been using forever. through our access. We just, I don't know, we need to come up with a way to work with the county, to be honest.
We can try working with them, Jerome. But ultimately, it comes down to equity across all the beach accesses. You know, you do one, you do the other. You don't cut favors, that's where you run into problems. The other thing too is, if this comes up about the council, you may have to recuse yourself.
I don't know that. Well, I don't know how Matthew's involved in that.
He's the management, property manager.
But it doesn't affect your own monetarily, so I don't think.
I don't think we're getting rid of them, yeah.
No,
What about that?
but you understand, Patty, it's a very gray area.
I think we should, I agree, I think we can certainly look at options to work with them
And I think too,
without hurting them.
well, I don't know if that's the ideal situation, if you're gonna be able to do that. At some point, you're gonna have to make a decision. However, Chief, if you would make sure that we have pictures and documentation. Okay, because we're not up there, you know, and we don't see what you see. And it would be interesting to have that.
Get us some kind of rabbit trail of where the fire spots are used. That would help.
And another thing I'll point out, in any of the beach accesses, and you've heard all our beach standards before too, you can have grandiose ideas on how you want people to park. That doesn't mean they're gonna park like that. If you don't have parking spaces delineated, then they're gonna park however. And all it takes is one car to go in there and park wrong, and it screws up that lot from
It's a
the
domino effect.
Yes.
Well, and especially too, since we've got a lot of these big jewelry trucks.
That's right.
And they all want to park on access instead of the street. And it really takes up a lot of room that extend way on out.
You get the tall trucks with super cabs, crew cabs and everything, and they're longer and
Well, see, at some point, we may have to deal with that, Chief. Because they pull up in the other bridge activities, they pull long on the opposite side from the traffic because they can't get into a space. So we may have to put those on the street. Look at that too, when you're.
It was a problem last.
Sorry?
That was a problem last summer with big trucks.
Yeah.
It won't only be about 6 weeks. We'll start getting into break time again. I'm sure we'll be.
When you own 38 of them.
It's always a problem.
Oh,
All right, let's see if we can get the census count resolution in before taking place, okay?
Yeah, and I'd like to just mention one thing about this though. Meanwhile, while we're not voting on this, I think it would be really good if we could talk to the owner and tell them that in writing, he has to warn his renters, this is where you can park, and if you double park, you will get a ticket.
Did you hear that, Mark?
I did. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you handle that?
I can. We would still be, I guess, knowingly allowing him to encroach on our parking space on our property by saying that, which, if that's what council wants.
It sounds like we're actually not, because the chief said he's written tickets for that. And we'll continue to write tickets, and that's what the letter is, I think Patty's saying to him is, advise your people that they're subject to tickets if they're in our area.
Oh, I know, but if they pull perpendicular, if they pull straight forward to the house in between those two sets of steps, they only have 12 feet. You can't fit a car in there
So they can't
without
drive
hanging
over.
over onto our property. You can only fit a car in there if you parallel like he's got in the picture.
Well, and that's the instruction that's what Patty's asking.
Okay,
Tell the homeowner.
they can't do that at all.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, I think she's saying advise them if their cars are in the right of way, not in a parking space. In your example, half the car
Mhm.
would be sitting in the beach access, that they're subject to being ticketed.
Okay.
Is what she's asking.
Is that correct, Patty?
So that they know ahead of time, they can't do that, so, you know,
And the
they
chief
don't
is
have
saying
to
they're
extend
ticketed
them
for
if they
that,
get
right?
it,
Yes,
because
that's
they get a ticket.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if they can't park there, we may as well put the fence then. Right.
But my understanding is the council is still in wanting to talk with the
Okay.
owner about trying to resolve it.
We want to give them a chance,
But in the
Okay.
meantime,
but it doesn't need to go.
The owner, like, put a diagram of where they can park and maybe like, you know, we got one car here, one car here, one car here, park this way. And, you know, that he can leave with the guests and say, you're gonna park this way, or you're gonna, if you don't park this way, you're subject to.
Or-
ticket.
Give them one car for each unit, because there's how many units they drive?
I think
5 or 6?
5 or 6.
One space in his lot for, one car for each unit, and the rest of them park out on the street. A sign goes, one parking space for each unit.
Yeah, well,
In the beach
the-
access?
No, in his lot.
The owner comes up with this plan and then gives it to them, and they follow it or they get ticketed.
And historically, I think that's been tried with previous councils going through some old documents where there actually is a diagram with wheel stops, and it's probably up to whatever the building zoning ordinance requires. And that was never adopted for one reason or another. So that has been tried and documented. But I don't see why we couldn't do it. Try that again.
You shouldn't need to drag out go to the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Our census count resolution, we know it's probably not correct, but anyway.
Well, according to the preliminary numbers that I've seen, our population is still decreasing. So it will from the 414 that we have currently, or at least I'm saying this is preliminary numbers. I would recommend that we hire someone who is versed in doing a census resolution, which basically is an appeal to the count. And we appeal it again. We did it internally last time, and although we were successful, it did not change the count. But if our voter registration roll is increasing and we're building however many new houses, Patrick, every year, and we have 4% taxpayers, that I can get that number, I'm sure it's substantial. How is our population of permanent residents decreasing? And this impacts us for everything. Like I said, capital project sales tax, because we don't have enough population, we don't qualify to have a committee member.
Right.
It's impacting us financially.
10 years.
And it's for 10 years, that is correct. And it comes around in 2030, and we're just constantly getting hammered on this, and have been since 2010, when they decreased it by 200 people in 2010. And we know that this census count was not correct.
what was the number?
Right now, the preliminary numbers I'm seeing are decreased. We went down to like 404.
We lost population according to the census, which is, the census this time was a
They
joke.
officially haven't submitted it, but it's the preliminary numbers showing that we're decreasing in population.
All right, who does this hours, and have you projected costs?
I haven't projected costs, but we're gonna have to find, and I was hoping that Bert could help, try to find some kind of attorney. We need to hire an attorney. And it needs to be somebody who is versed in doing a census count resolution.
Someone who's been successful.
That's
with their
done.
bills.
That's correct.
And it's never going to be a good census as long as we have people, the state of South Carolina, that's rent their house in the summer for X number of weeks. They do the count in July, which just about everything's rented. And the person gets their census form. Well, they're in Greenville, they don't even think about it. You can warn them, you can ask them, you can educate them.
I mean, Kelly did a great job trying to, educate everybody. We sent out information time and time again. She sent it out through the Property Owners Association. It was on our Facebook account,
Send out a
and it
postcard.
just did not do anything, and it did not make any difference.
Well, I think we need to find that, but also on that, we need to take a serious look through Carlton County. Why we have so many people on the voter roll and such a low census. If somebody turned in their permanent residence in Greenville and they're getting 4% down here, something's wrong.
Well, I know that the assessor's offices are looking at that, where they have dual, properties, and they are talking now because they all know that it happens. The problem with the voters registration role is that, and we've had this discussion with the voter registration office, Deborah can tell you, they have to request their name be removed from the voters registration. So we do have people that are carryover people that have not owned property here, and there's no way to remove them.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about through the property assessment offices, through the property offices. Now, if they have granted them 4% based on their statement that they are a permanent homeowner, and they're cheating the county out of 2%, but yet they're on the road, their driver's license says down here, but their census says Spartanburg. Now, it needs to come through that property office. Because not only are they cheating, but they're also cheating Carlton County. If I were Carlton County, I'd be wanting my tax dollars.
We do audit that annually, the 4% versus 6%. The problem is that the only trigger that we have is by going by the voter registration, and the voter registration is not accurate. It could be that we only have 600, if the voter registration is accurate, then we would know how many people are at the 4%, and we could correlate that. The problem is that we don't have anything that's accurate at this point. And there's no way for us to cross-check who filled out what on the census because it's all confidential. So we can't go to the census and say, we want to know all the people that said that they were registered at Edisto, so that we can correlate that to the 4% and see who we missed, because it's confidential. You can't get that information.
I still think, and I have a real burn on about this, okay, because I see abuse it all the time. And it means that somebody is picking up a load for the renters at 2%. Permanent homeowners are picking up those expenses. Carlton property needs to be more stringent about when they look at 4%, 6%. And are we still checking to make sure that they don't rent over time that's allowed by the state?
We try to do that, but it's very difficult to actually calculate whether it's over 6 months or under 6 months. We did a lot better last year. We did an audit on all the
It's
renters.
only 10 weeks, Sarah. It's like 12 weeks. It's not months. It's only weeks. And I think a lot of these that at 4% are going way over. Now, I don't know how you process that through the rental companies or whatever. That'd be the quickest way to see if they have rentals, exceeding that. But the state says, and I've forgotten, it's somewhere between 10 and 12 weeks, that they can only rent it and be considered a permanent homeowner.
Okay, could you look at that?
And first, look at the census attorney and somebody who had success.
But does that make sense, Mark?
We need someone who's had
That's
success.
success.
We've had success, but we weren't
The
successful.
problem also, and I was getting feedback from the Census Bureau, the contact that I had, the most frustrating phrase that kept coming back to me when dealing with this issue was, well, they are allowed to fill out when they have two addresses, two, residences, you say, one in Greenville, one here. Well, where do they spend the majority of their time? I don't know, nor do they probably know, because they're back and forth. So that's pardon my French, but it's a bullcrap phrase for me to try to get an accurate count when,
And they don't wanna say it.
and the homeowners don't want to say it because of however their taxes are. So the whole census thing just really burned me this year, just to be honest. So
Well,
It's always.
I don't ever want to be asked to do it again.
Oh, Mark, it's a little bit for you.
I was disappointed too, in that, I guess I made something I should know. That when we started out with it, we named some people to be a committee.
Mhm.
And that they were not well, I know we had COVID, granted, it was a strange deal. But the fact that they were not actively taking part, and if they didn't try to organize people to go around, and check and stuff, that kind of chaps me.
It was a hard situation with COVID and with everything. It was difficult.
And what hurt us was we wanted to send, when we sent a letter out to everyone, what hurt us was we wanted to say, if you're claiming as though it's your 4% tax as your permanent residence, you should fill out the census and say this is your permanent residence. However, the census does not agree with that. They said where you are on March something is where your permanent residence is. Where you are physically in March, and I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense.
Just the way it's designed.
That needs to be changed.
Is it when people didn't have multiple residences or if they're travelers?
Because the people who are like Esto that have people that have multiple homes, we're the ones that are being harmed by the way the census is done.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're not the majority.
And I'd like to say one more thing, or one thing. I just think that whoever we might hire, that we need to impress upon them that COVID really affected this, because normally we would have census workers who would go door to door, and we could not do that this year.
There were some, but it was very minimal,
Right.
very minimal.
Okay. All right, let's take a 10-minute break. On Christmas decorations 2021, you know, every year we have to replace or add to. So we were given some, designs in your packet. And, you need to look at them from the standpoint of what we already have, so that they kind of at least color coordinates or something. So, did anybody have a particular preference? What did you like, Jerome?
I think I like the holiday green and blue last page.
Do we have any blue ones up?
Yeah, let me just bring everybody up to date what happened. So the TIE committee reviewed numerous pages of different banners and designs. And we still have those different ones. The problem was they were little smaller, they were small icons. And I do have to say that when they chose the season greetings one, it looked like it was black, but in fact it's green. And I didn't realize that until I blew it up. You know, this is something that needs to be projected and everybody needs to look at. We have some money this year where we can purchase some additional banners and possibly another, probably turtle lights, if that was the most, the one that people like the most. So the question that I have is, how does council want this decoration, the decorations to look? So we interplace the banners in between the lights because the lights are a lot more expensive than banners. Banners run, around $90, $80. On sale, we might get them for $75. Then you gotta get the poles and stuff. My suggestion was I was gonna put together a plan based on polls out there, but I'd like to have some input from council, whether we have, and I hate to say it, a committee, so that you can look at different banners, how they're spaced, which banners go with what. We currently have the Peace on Earth and the Joy, Joy, Joy. So we have numerous ones of those. I hate to just get rid of them because they're all in fairly good condition. But we also need to add more because as I talked to Councilman Kaiser, we've had some that have been lost or destroyed. And we used to go further down the boulevards and
I would like to see, I don't know what you start with the banners of the light, but either way, a light, maybe 3 banners and a light, or 2 banners. All depends on how many we have. But if we need to spread the lights out more, then I don't think I'd go past 4. I would recommend 3.
Or the problem we're running into there, Jerome, is money, because you have to have those wires for the lights.
Right, and that was my next question. The lights, are the lights on the light pole or the pole without the light? Or does it matter?
So there is a plug on the pole that we installed in Patrick Zip, his crew can answer it better than myself. We put the wire up there, is that correct? Can we give them?
We build the electrical outlet and supply the wire and the plug, and Dominion installs it.
So most of them already have a plug up there that we have lights on now. And I think it is spaced a certain distance. I'd have to look at what that distance is. And that's why I have a map and I was gonna mark on there. But then the question is, how do we interspace the banners? And in what sequence? Do you do red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, red, blue, blue, green, green?
Yeah, you'd have to see, I'm sure you'd have to lay it out and see exactly what colors you have, because I think we have a lot of red.
Red and green.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think we had equal of each at one time, and now we've got them, I guess, placed differently. You put them inside the shed.
We try to, when we put them up, we put the season greetings up at the front. up by the pavilion, and then we alternate green, red, green, red, green, red, until we can no longer alternate.
Right, well, I've noticed that the banners have stopped before they got to my house, and usually before our storms, they continued on down further.
Right, we lost poles
So-
and banners, right.
Yeah,
And so we want to replace those.
right.
But then we need some input from council as to how y'all want that to look. That makes sense. And
I'd hate to bring in another color. Because we talked about branding, you know, I'd love to have some blue drum, because you have blue beach access and stuff like that. But if we do that, we throw the baby out with the beach water, or we look like Calico City for a couple of years, you know? So I would prefer, just for continuity, to stick with the colors we
Green
already
and
have.
red.
And there's some gold and white, you know.
Right, there, that other banner that says, you know, SW wishes you season's greetings, that would be, green and red also, if we decided to add a new one.
Yeah, see, I like that one.
so the three on the front page come from the same company. And we could look at their banners from the same company that would have the same green, the same red, if you wanted to have some other verbiage on the front or design. And the season greetings is from the same company. It's the one that I gave you the information on that talks about that it's,
The grommets and all that.
right, right. And they've held up very well. And you can look at the other banners that they already have in stock that are green and red, which would be the same color green and the same color red, so you're not getting a red, because reds are in different shades. You have one red that looks this way and one red that looks a little darker or lighter. Or we can continue and make more that say Edisto Beach wishes you season greetings, and not have it just at the entrance, which I think we have 2 flags at the entrance, one on each side. And then we start on the one side where the poles are, alternating banners.
I like that with the city name, which is your season's greetings.
I do too.
Okay,
Now, my question, the next thing is, typically white is not considered an ink. So if we have the town of Edisto Beach in white, then you're down to 2 color inks. The green and the red.
I think they don't count the banner itself as one of the colors, do they? I think it's just the inks that they put on the banner.
right.
You're saying the same
So the
thing.
white and the red would be 2 inks.
Okay,
The white and the green would be 2 inks on the red. And then the piece on earth would be 3, because you have yellow, white, and red.
I like the season's greetings just for simple cost, efficiency, you know, agreeing with the other, but that's up to, council when we get to it.
Does somebody want to volunteer to work with us to try to do this so that we can get orders in?
Yeah.
Okay, are y'all okay with that?
Yeah.
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 Take one for the team.
Yeah, that's right.
This is really.
All right, so
this is all
Councilman
my
Kaiser is going to assist us.
And if y'all need more help, I'll be glad to.
Okay.
There you go, Patty.
There we go. We'll use Councilman Kaiser and Councilman Snyder, and we'll get it done. Okay. We're done.
All right. All right, sewer system.
All right, I was gonna let Patrick Zimp talk about this.
Sure.
All right, sewer system. So as you know, we are in the middle or coming to the end of, hopefully, an end to the American Engineering sewer study that's being conducted as we speak. What they did was install data loggers at all 13 of our lift stations. And basically what they're hoping to find from this is where the problems are in relation to our wastewater collection system. I think it's, there's some misinformation out there that people are thinking we don't have the capacity to treat effluent. when in reality, it's the collection system is where you're having the problems. And that comes from a lot of different reasons why we're having that inflow infiltration as well as over tapping in certain systems. So they're doing this study.
Can I ask you a quick question on the data loggers, they're measuring flow?
They're measuring run times and how often the pumps are running. Calculating the flow is extremely difficult in wastewater.
Right.
So they're looking at run times and run durations and how often they're running.
Okay. So you got some kind of float system that will trigger the thing.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
And then they can determine the estimated flow based on the runtime and capacity of the pump.
If you guess that.
Right. The issue with our system is it was originally designed just for the resort. And as it's expanded, it's just compounded an issue inside the resort, getting the wastewater to the treatment facility. And that's where our issues are. So hopefully by the end of the study, they'll give us some guidance and determining where the issues are the worst and then how to correct those issues.
Are they going to share that information with us?
Oh, absolutely.
So really, it's my understanding, Patrick, that this is an update once it's coming.
Hang on, I'm sorry.
It's my understanding that this is a warning shot across the bow that this will be coming, that we'll need to make some decisions.
Right, this is nothing. So what happened was COVID, and we had already given notice to proceed for this project. And they had the data loggers installed, and our accommodations or rentals were down and they're logging data. And so American Engineering came back and their concern was the data that they're recording may not be as accurate as a normal year. So we asked them to give us a proposal. The proposal was basically the same amount as the original proposal, and we knew that going forward, we were gonna have to make some corrections to the system, probably add a new line in to go to the wastewater treatment plant, which is gonna be a substantial cost, and I didn't wanna spend another double that amount on data logging when they can make, an educated guess on what that is going to be. So they're in the process of wrapping up all the data, and then they'll be coming back to tell us the best solution to the problem as part of the sewer capital improvement project plan. They're estimating that the project cost for the solution is going to be anywhere between $750,000 and $1 million. And then this would eliminate the problems that we're having at lift station A and lift station B and the other lift stations in the collection system, because the volume is too great going through that whole series of lift stations to get to the wastewater.
Let me ask you this, when we look at this iris and look at their projected cost to correct it, I'd like to see what we have had to put into repairing, the constant, because it's always something. I'd like to compare the cost from the last couple of years to see if we recoup. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we're going to be able to offset, save the constant maintenance and stuff. So when we get that, could we get those numbers?
We can, I can pull together all the capital, because we had a viable capital improvement plan up until about a year ago when, a few years ago when hurricanes started impacting us, we had plans to go in and do some repairs to the lift station where you wash them, you seal them, you replace all the controls, and Patrick knows a lot better than I do, pumps. And we sort of put that to the side because we were too busy dealing with hurricane-related problems and impellers and pumps that were going bad because we were pumping sand through the system. So we can get those costs And then I guess the next thing is, can I just lead right into the utility rates?
Please.
So the reason I put the utility rates on there is because when I met with American Engineering is a company that did our last rate study. They updated our rate study. And then we were discussing the capital improvement plan. One of the issues that was brought to me by American Engineering was that they gave us a plan. It was approved by council, and we did not follow the plan. We did on the water side, we did not on the sewer side. And that was because in discussions with council, because we were increasing the water rates 15%, council felt like that it was too much to ask to increase the sewer rates at the same time, and we felt like we had enough reserve that we could accommodate any problems that we had with the sewer system. What we did not realize, or me, is that we were using that money to put it forward so that we can make these improvements now that are coming up that we need to make. And so they have strongly suggested that we follow their plan and increase the sewer rates 5% so that we can start building the money necessary to make this improvement.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible? We kept raising water rates according to their plan. Is it possible, if we have lower maintenance costs and lower running costs to produce the water, at some point can we reduce the water rates enough to offset the sewer?
Without knowing, without having enough time invested in knowing what the actual cost of running the wastewater or the water treatment plant is going to be, I can't answer that question. It's possible that we could not increase it as proposed in their rate study annually, because they still have an increase for next year regardless of whether we paid before 15%, which everybody has. They still have an increase, I'll have to look at it.
Right now it's 3.
So they still have an increase of 3%
On the water.
on the water. And then they asked us to increase the sewer 5%. So the thing is, well, actually it's 5% on the water and it's 3% on the sewer, but they want to flip that. Until we really know, and like I said, Patrick, he's been monitoring his operational costs, until we know, I would be hesitant to change anything until we know if we're gonna have enough money to keep operating.
But with another year, it should give us a better pattern.
I think so. I mean, he should know what his operational costs are gonna be as far as electric, chemicals, maintenance costs. Right now, everything's under warranty.
Okay, well, that was just a curiosity question, there's some balance somewhere.
And I know that everybody, we had a huge increase in garbage. And it's very difficult for people on fixed incomes to have to pay these rates. But we also have to make sure that we can handle the wastewater that we have now. We have a lot of people that are wanting to tap into our sewer system and we can't let them. So it is going to impact building, if they can't get a, perk test and get a septic system. So right now, we have limited who can tap into our system except people that have the certificates that they've already prepaid for. And we're getting requests. I know Patrick said he gets requests,
I get multiple requests per week for sewer tap ins, especially with the way the housing market is right now. And it's become an issue, especially in areas that was previously available and we've typically given out sewer taps. Now we're not, and, yeah, homeowners are not happy about it. So, but that's part of the deal. But yes, I get multiple a week.
I got a question. Mainly directed at Bert, I think. And so if someone came for a building permit application and their only option was sewer, can we just carte blanche say, no, we don't have it, or would that take a moratorium, some type of moratorium by council?
To stop issuing sewer taps, is what you said?
To not issue a building permit based on they couldn't get a sewer tap?
They could do an engineered system though, right?
They don't have a way to do it. In your example, they don't have a way to do
If
it.
there's no other way.
You have to look into that.
Usually there's an engineered system though after.
Right.
Right now, we're just telling them no.
I'm just saying that I need,
But we're not obligated as a general proposition, if that's what you're asking.
I need to be sure that when I say no, I've rejected no permit application, that I can just do that based on, we say that our sewer system is full, we can't take any more taps. Or would that take a council moratorium saying you can't do any more taps until such?
I think that's what,
I
that's,
think our ordinance states that we assess whether we have availability and we can issue taps based on availability. And right now, if you look at what we were permitted for, we have no availability. Like Patrick said, it's not our wastewater treatment plant that's the problem, it's the collection system, because our collection system is a myriad of different lift stations that are permitted for a certain amount of taps, and we are full. We're tapped out. No pun intended.
I just trying to make sure we don't get that build steps to the courthouse on me saying no. Because
well, I mean, we can,
You can tell them that they can't submit the plans with a sewer tap, because they can't get one issued from the utilities department, then they would have to come to us with an alternative solution.
question, don't get in trouble.
First time.
All right, well, you check on that, Bert. All right, moving on. I had a concern about, and it was parked on streets and it should have been in front of houses on public streets, not under houses. Some people in the street be under houses. There are people down here that put a dark colored boat trailer out on Palmetto. It takes up a lane. There's no warning lights, there's no cones, there's nothing to tell you if you're coming up through there that there is a trailer parked in the road. Particularly down at the north end of the beach. If you come around, there's a gas station. Those first two houses there's 70% of the time there's a trailer park there with no warnings, no anything. Well, that's a pretty short reaction time, folks. And, they have a right to park on a public right of way, but I'm asking that we require them to have some kind of warning as to when it's there. Because some of these construction people will put a trailer out on the road and leave it, for a long time. So I'm asking that we look at something requiring them to at least give you a heads up. Even a rattlesnake rattles before it bites. Some kind of warning. So that was my thing.
Would that be temporary? Would that be, because people come for the week and they are parked in that area there? they would have to do it at that point too. Is that all the time, or is that for residents?
I think, Jerome, that there should be, I mean, if you are hauling a load that extends beyond your truck, you're supposed to have a red flag or something hanging from it, right? It would be a simple matter of them flagging something on there, so at least it stands out. Whether it's, a reflective ribbon or something, there needs to be some way to warn people that you're coming right up, because that's pretty dangerous. And I don't know the perfect solution, how we do it, but I know we need to look for that. So. Anybody else?
If I can comment on that.
Yeah.
We've had several accidents over the last few years with people who hit our cars. And I worry about trailers, particularly the boat trailer, like you're saying, because it's so low, people don't see it. So something should be done.
Patrick, that sounds like, Brown, that sounds like something for you, for you and Bert to figure out.
I don't mind working on it, but it sounds more like a police chief actually, to me, than being on the road there.
Well, he had to step out of the room, so you're the picture.
I think you did that on purpose.
I think you did too.
I guess you're the junior assistant.
Well, would y'all get together,
Yes, ma'am.
the Bert and the police chief, and let's come up with a solution, because it is becoming more and more a problem. So,
I mean, do you think it could be as simple as just putting a cone
yes,
behind the trailer?
yeah, with a fluorescent, cones
Yeah.
have the fluorescent things on them. That's all we have to do.
Now, how do we inform the tourists of that, so they
Yeah,
know that
that's
there's a local rule? How is it enforced in
Each rental house has a cone.
Start bringing cones.
Then if we have a hurricane, we can borrow them.
How come Head City? There has to be some solution, because a lot of these trailers don't even have the red reflective round things on the back. That's particularly dangerous.
That's a cause for a ticket right there. I mean,
Yeah.
that could be enforced.
That's another tactic, Patrick.
I'm gonna get a new ticket book this time.
All right, if nobody else has anything, damage to bike paths. What's happening is people will build a house and we make them repair the sidewalk when they build a house, where they damage it or, go across it, crack it, whatever. We're not doing that for bike paths. And then they move in. They've had the big trucks and all the equipment and the construction people parking on bike paths. They move in and then we're expected to fix it. We've had that on Jungle Shores. And it is a problem. So how do we process doing bike paths, especially if we're getting ready to redo them? Because building is not stopping. Do we want to be responsible for somebody else's construction cost? Or do we want to do something that says you have to repair the bike path to the same extent, just like you do sidewalks when you build a house? The other part of that is we have people down here, especially on my land, as long as I can remember, their yards are not maintained, so the sand is filtrated across the bike path at all times. The guys can go down through there and clean it up, and 2 days later, it's packed in sand. Well, when somebody hits that with a bike, it's not the firm surface they thought it was. You know what I'm talking about, John?
Well, I
There's
think,
several places like that.
I think that's where you have, like on the bike path, you've got like ruts or something that have happened, and then when it rains, you know, all that stuff collects in the ruts.
No, this is coming out of yards consistently. The yard is sloped like this down toward the bike path, and it's not planted with grass. It's sand. And there's a whole stretch of the bike path that stays sand.
Is that library?
You know what I'm talking about. And there's some others that same up. So that's something to, and these are for council to think about, okay? How do we get a solution? Because, it gets very discouraging for, council and the staff to make improvements. And then somebody turns around and either destroys them or doesn't care enough to keep it up.
Well, if you can show that you have, that the actual property owner damaged the bike path, and I can give you, for instance, with town property, because I was putting in a new mailbox in front of my house, and I dug a little too deep and busted the water line. Well, I got my $1,000 bill from the town. So that was, I mean, they didn't come fix it for free. And my path is, town property. So if they riding over it and it was perfectly fine before they rode over it and they damaged it, they should be responsible for
We have to have a record
replacing
of,
it.
Patrick, here we go again with you. When you go out and you issue a building permit, do you inspect that lot and the bike path and all that where the place is going to be built?
And typically, it's not been practice to go out prior to construction to do a site visit, but that can definitely be incorporated into the process. Do a site visit and document what it looks like prior to, and then make sure that it's at least at that condition before the CO. We do have a section in the code, 1435 E, 6E.
Specific about it.
Gives us the authority to have them make any repairs they call, any damage they call, make those repairs before doing the CO.
Well, the thing that bothers me about doing it that way, Patrick, is it becomes a he said, she said. If you have a record to begin with, you have a normal standard that you can compare it to. So I would recommend that when you issue a building permit, that you at least visit the site and see if there's any public infrastructure, like sidewalk or bike path or whatever, and document it with pictures.
We can do that. Like I said, it's not historically haven't been practiced, but we've had good luck as far as getting things fixed that could have been questionable, but we can definitely make a practice to make sure it gets documented before the construction.
It just makes it easier, that you have some record. All right, and this is the point which we ask, if we ever have special events again.
Can I just go back to
Yes, you may.
this one? That still isn't gonna solve the problem where people say don't have sod in their yard and sand is washing from their yard onto a bike path. We discussed this a little bit. I mean, the only way to resolve that is if they retain it somehow, and I don't know if there's any way that you can require them to retain their property so it's not going, because that's the only thing in it like it. It's not a matter of people have damaged it by driving across it, it's a matter of your yard is just eroding into the bike path.
I don't know what the solution is ours, but we definitely have to take a look at it, because there's no way that streets and roads can keep up with cleaning that off consistently. Or at least ask a homeowner to clean it off, or they're approved that cuts their sand.
Or fix the yards and what.
Yeah,
Not to complicate this further,
thanks, Patrick.
but the majority of the places that we're talking about here the right of way extends up into the yard past the edge of the bike path.
So should
So if
we
you
see
ask a
that?
homeowner to put up some kind of, say, a metal border along the bike path, it's on town right of way. It just complicates it.
Like building between the sidewalk and the street.
But homeowners don't own it. Because we've had that issue on Jungle Shores where homeowners have put something right along the bike path. If it gets damaged, then, we put a tricky spot.
The shoulder on that bike path might be just hazardous, a little bit of sand on it.
Exactly.
Say that, what, Patrick?
He said the shoulder on the bike path might be about as hazardous as sand on it.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I get complaints about that, people that hit it, with their bikes, and it kind of throws the front wheel of their bike. So that's something else for your consideration. And there's no easy solutions to any of these, and they didn't happen overnight. But it's something we need to, when we're looking at long-range solutions, or we're looking at replacing bike paths, before we put the money in, we need to take some of these things into consideration, and that's part of why it's on here. Look at it in your long-range plan. So, all right, special event sponsorships. Suggestions.
I think the three that we did last year, were good ones. And I'd like to see us stay with those three, Shag Fest, Cooking on the Creek, and Governor's Cup.
Kelly,
If they occur.
yeah, Kelly, Cooking on the Creek. Are you getting your money there from ATAX?
A portion, what ATAX will approve to pay for.
How much, what proportion?
I believe there was, I had to make sure of this, but I believe it was 10, maybe 5.
It was 15.5.
Thank you.
15,500. And what did the town put in, Kelly?
I haven't received any from the town since the 2020 was postponed due to COVID.
Okay. The year before,
There was none from the town.
okay. We've been typically, and Patty, I agree with you, those are our big events. Typically, we have been taking those out of alcohol permitting. And when I looked at alcohol permitting, it wasn't real generous the other day. So, and we were running behind on collections in that too, weren't
It fluctuates.
we? When's the next, deposit due? I forgot.
It usually comes in at the end of the fiscal year. I think right now we have
12,
12,000.
12.5.
Okay. So that would be something that we'd have to, at the time, in looking at that, we'd have to, portion it out. Okay, benefit ratio or whatever, but,
And I think we should put special emphasis on our own project, the Cooking on the Creek. That ought to get more money than the other two.
yeah, but they also get ATAX paid.
Okay.
Well,
Just
I'm gonna
Cooking on the Creek
put-
is only getting
put a
8.
wrench in the works on that, as I think that council is going to have to make some difficult decisions moving forward with budgeting about how local accommodations, ATAX is gonna be allocated so that we can start putting money away for beach nourishment.
Right.
I think that we would be very short-sighted if we didn't start that process, and although we have been putting away 200,000 a year, it's not sufficient, and I think that we need to start allocating the majority of those accommodations funds or tourism funds into an account for beach nourishment.
We've done that in past hours, but we had other avenues I agree with you that we have to put an emphasis on that, but we can't stop all other functions of the county. So, it's a quandary, but I'm interested to see how relaxed they're going to be on the hospitality tax. You know, which came up this past legislative.
Right.
If that's a possible.
Well, we can currently use hospitality for beach nourishment. But the question is gonna come with hospitality is, does council want to start fixing some of these drainage issues like Mark Villa with hospitality if that becomes something that we use?
At the same time, we give money to the chamber for advertising. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you get them here, that's one of the biggest complaints. What do we do when we get there? And I think if we short-sightedly drop some of these special events, we have cut our own throats. That we are not just a sewer town. We're not just a beach town. We're not just one facet, but we have to be multifaceted. I think we need to find a way to do that.
I think we have to realize, like a better term, who butters the bread, and make sure that we don't walk away from our economic development arm, which is tourism. And we have to be able to share that part of the pie back and forth as much as we can. But where does the tax money come from?
Right. But in keeping that in mind, you know, we've got to take care of our beach. If we're gonna have to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a balancing act.
I'm not saying we go hog wild, Patty.
Yeah.
You know, some years we've been very generous. I'm just saying somewhere we need to show support and at the time decide what funds, even if it's minimal, that we can expend to support our
I think it's a balancing
tourism.
act.
I mean, again, so we have 12,500 in the alcohol permitting, which is the only fund that y'all can designate towards events. You know, we've been down this road before. So if you're donating or you're sponsoring 10,000 for each one of these 3 or 4.
We couldn't. We couldn't.
The issue is going to be where's the money going to come from? Because it's going to have to come out of general fund because there are no other funds that can support an event.
I'm not saying we do it at the level that we did before.
Okay.
I'm saying that if we have 12,500 in alcohol permitting, that we portion it out according to the ability of that fund. And I am no more, you can only pay what you have. And I'm saying if there's 3 events, we can say to them, okay, you each get $4,000, that's it, make it big. You get what I'm doing?
Yeah, I still think we ought to pay more for our owners again, though. I think, you know, like Kelly should get 5 and then the other 2 should divide the remainder. That's just my 2 cents.
I think it also should depend on how much they can get from ATAX also.
Right.
Well, that's a good point.
And they might be able to ask for more for ATAX because we don't have it on our side.
But then, once again, you go into your beach nourishment stuff, yeah. I think Crawford thinks it has to be balanced now.
I do think that we need to increase our amount that we deposit for our beach nourishment from 200,000 to maybe 3. Start saving.
Well, if you look at the legislation that's out there that's being proposed, even if it goes to South Carolina PRT, which is the state, and the state allocates the funding, they're going to ask for a match. And Are we gonna limit ourselves by what we can match is gonna be the question, because I think right now it's proposed as 50-50, except for state property, so if we pay that with the state park, they would pay 100% or whatever of theirs, but we would have to come up with a 50% match. So if we get a $10 million project, we'd have to come up with $5 million. And we don't have that sitting in the bank.
When
We see the problem with that on the next point.
we get paid, I know we have some outstanding money from FEMA to replacing our tank. When we get that money from FEMA, as I said, what does that do to our,
It goes back into the local accommodations beach fund.
that's what I thought.
So
So,
it replaces what we spent. It's the same as the spot nourishment project. What we get back will be paid back into the beach nourishment fund. But it's not growing to the point where it needs to grow so that we're going to be able to do this.
we need to supplement, but at the same time, we have to realize we have to dip into it, after the storms. And so we've been running behind because FEMA pays in retro. So that has not been fully refunded at this point. So if a project comes up right now, until FEMA pays that money back, for this last stuff, hadn't paid us for the sand fixing from the one before, either.
That's $58,000.
Yeah, and so there's some funds out there, but we can't see them or realize them now because they're not in payment. Although they've been approved and they're due up. So I want you to realize that too.
How long will it take to get to where we can recognize that?
It's the federal government. What do you think? And
I
I know
send them
this,
an email once a week. So I don't know. I've been told the same thing every week.
Checking them out.
and so, Bob, I know it's sarcastic, but it's true,
I would ask though that council consider that at the end of every fiscal year that we look at what's left in some of these tourism accounts
and roll it over.
and roll them into a dedicated account for beach nourishment so that we don't say, hey, we got all this money, let's spend it on something else.
Right.
And we have done that in the past. I just think that would be a prudent, policy.
I think that would be perfect.
I've written down here, beach maintenance line item.
And the thing about it is, we talk about these special events. And if something else comes up during the year, it's like Walmart. You put in your request once a year, they have a deadline. If you miss that deadline, you don't get a grant. If somebody is projecting a project, then they need to come to us before budget time. It needs to be in the budget.
We would need to notify all of the possible people though, to let them know that in advance.
But I think if we're gonna budget accurately, that's the least we can work with, is to have a request before.
Well, and they can go out with a budget announcement, Patty. On the schedule that you send out ours, the step, we can put one on there that we can publicize that says, last day to accept special event applications. Not applications, but you know what I'm saying, requests for funds or whatever. Yeah, we have to. All right, y'all, I've got 12. How much time do you want for lunch?
3 hours.
I didn't say nap, no, Crawford, I said, look.
We're back to Daniel Island, back real quick.
What y'all think? Y'all want about an hour and a half, because that you get home and have some food and do whatever you need to do.
Mayor, we have another meeting that starts at 2, the people that are in this meeting. So just keep that in mind.
Well, we're down to essentially 2 more topics.
This person,
I have medicine I can take together. So, can you do it in,
30?
Yeah, why don't we do 30?
I gotta drive home. Let's do it 45. And 45 will be exactly 12 o'clock now, 12:45.
We just can't do consensus.